Hello, so this is journal number 3, and the prompt is your biggest takeaway from your SLP interview and conducting the FBA, um, and how will you apply what you've learned in the future in your work with individuals on the spectrum. Well, first starting with the SLP that I interviewed Tamika Martin at the local high school that I don't actually work at, but who I have connections with there in the district, and was able to connect with her. And I've worked with SLPs in the past quite a bit because I've been doing this for about 12 years, and I never actually sat down, which is, I guess, sad to say, sat down and actually asked them questions um, outside of specific to students, obviously, but never really sat down and talked to them about, their history, why they became an SLP, and what led to that career path, um, as well as talking about some assessments and strategies more specific. It's often been more of a roles kind of conversation. Their role was around um, strategies for communication or to help us access, their needs through whatever way. And when I talked to Tamika, it was just really cool. I mean, she's a wonderful person anyway, and so she's really nice and gregarious, and we had a good conversation. It was very funny, and just talked about trying new things and not just waiting on the SOP to give approval sometimes, but also reflect and give them some ideas on what you tried and what works and what doesn't work. And just having that more collaborative approach versus, this is your role and that's my role, and we have to wait and make sure we get, training or whatever the case may be from you to work with the student. Um, and it's a lot more real to be collaborative that way. And so that was important. And conducting the FBA was very interesting as well. In my reflection for the FBA assignment that I just submitted, I talked about how I came into the observation believing a certain thing about a student and the function of the behavior that the student had and why they were behaving that way. And in my more, direct observation, it became clear that you put little different pieces together and like, oh, wait a minute. That initial, assumption wasn't incorrect entirely, but it wasn't the entire story. There was more to it. And we find that the student actually was not just seeking the reward, they were seeking more directly adult attention and affirmation and to be connected in some way. And we see this in further documentation around, what are potential triggers to this behavior. Well, one of those is when his father is gone for periods of time for his business and he doesn't have that attention from his father. And so then the school staff expect him to be more apt to behave and act out in aggressive ways, um, as well as the more recent one this year, which is why I was assigned, or was we were talking with the service provider on choosing this student, was because he did some dramatic things at home and destroyed pictures and property, and then that kind of spilled over into the day at the school as well. And so how do we curb that? What's the function of that, and how do we, respond to it? And so then it comes down to, well, was he seeking or was he reacting to the absence of attention? Because does that coincide with maybe a time that the dad wasn't around, or there was something else going on where he wasn't receiving the what he was hoping for or wanting, and so he was acting out in that way and aggressively and frustrated, um, and so there's more to do there because I didn't actually go that route. I just stayed with what was happening on campus, and I didn't observe those dramatic aggressive behaviors, but I did notice that the precursor behaviors, the less aggressive, but obviously that if they continue without being addressed, he gets to that point. I saw those happening quite a bit, and they're almost directly coincidental with the time an adult had to move on to another student, or was just not giving attention in some way, or something like that. And so then the question is more so not, if you do this, then you get this. It's, well, maybe the high interest, incentive isn't the best way to curb it, because it seems almost like the student is training the teachers in that regard. And so that creates some questions. Doesn't create answers yet, but it does create some more questions, and I think that they're valid ones, and it'll be interesting to bring that back to the service provider. I plan on meeting with her again next week, and so we'll talk about what I wrote and see if there's ways to incorporate that into their already working plan. So overall, interesting assignment, and I enjoyed it. And moving forward, definitely taking some time to build rapport with the team, the stakeholders, including the SLP, to take some time and really sit down and objectively look and observe closely a student behavior, and kind of recognize maybe other aspects of that behavior and how to kind of develop something different, so that it really is addressing that and not relying on a high interest um, a high interest reward that the student might be seeking. So, well, that was my reflection for this week, and yeah, hope it's helpful.